Welcome back and thank you for staying with Morning Express. Now, this past month has seen Kenya effectively take up the mantle of leading the East African community, ostensibly leading the integration agenda. This was after President Uhuru Kenyatta was named as the new EAC chairperson at the first virtual Head of State Summit, and former Iala Member of Parliament Peter Mathuki named as the EAC Secretary General. With the Kenyan pair at the helm, a lot will be expected of the capital, Nairobi. To actually help us discuss the fortunes for Kenya in the East African community is Dr. Kevit Desai, who is the Principal Secretary at the Ministry of East African Community Affairs. Many thanks for your time and good morning. Okay, it would be proper to rebound from that particular note in terms of gating this chairmanship position. What exactly does it mean for Kenya to have the rotational chairmanship position as you paint a picture or sort of a roadmap on the one-year expectations in what we hope to achieve?
Well, indeed, Jesse, this is the second time that we, as Kenya, we will be chairing the EAC after several years. And indeed, this opens up profound opportunities, very exciting from all perspectives, whether it's the promotion of what we are doing as a nation with respect to the vision of the Big Four agenda, the manufacturing sector, the health sector, the areas of the construction sector, and indeed, you know, the agricultural sector. The ability to amplify this several-fold into 6 countries and beyond, now growing with the view of the last summit opening up opportunities of further integration by way of Congo and Somalia, are significant from all perspectives to ensure that we're able to increase our growth, our access to greater markets, greater opportunities for our business community, our social welfare, and our environmental possibilities. All of this is part and parcel of the readiness and the capacity that exists with the current leadership. And indeed, His Excellency President Kenyatta, now being the chair of the summit, opens up this dimension not only for greater resilience of the East African community, but also self-reliance, the ability to, for the first time, progressively ensure that we promote value addition to our manufacturing sectors, the ability to find ways in which that the economy promotes a greater growth of the entire region and ensures that there's greater access to opportunity for all. And some of these areas are some of the profound implications with respect to His Excellency's chairmanship, in addition to the possibilities that he would have to create linkages with other external blocs like the ASEAN bloc, the European Union, thereby creating greater export potential for the entire East African community. And so within this context, we're extremely excited. We think that indeed it couldn't be a better time to promote Kenya's leadership within the EAC, to grow it, to establish it, to establish and address some of the challenges that it faces, and to promote that necessary integration and cohesiveness of what we feel is absolutely critical for the economy and social development.
Okay, so I think in one way or the other, the greater goal is better EAC integration. But even as we speak about the important role that Kenya is playing in terms of leading from the front, talk to us about the goal of the common market and the monetary union, even as we emphasize on the states to harmonize their commitment in order to facilitate free movement of people and in one way or the other achieving this desirable objective.
Indeed, you know, what is very innovative and forward-looking within the context of EAC in comparison to other international blocs is that the 4 pillars emerge beyond simply trade. You know, there's the customs union, the common market, the political federation, and the monetary union. And this gives a significant build towards ensuring that all capacities of integration are there, but of course under that profound vision of ensuring that it's people-centered, that it promotes as much equity to opportunity throughout the East African community. Within this context of the common market. Much has been achieved by way of ensuring that we're able to address progressively the non-tariff barriers, and increasingly we will be looking at new systems and structures in order to promote greater efficiency, in this case, of challenges that we face, in addition to the overall efforts that we're putting in place to secure value chains and to realize that ambition from produce to production of key value chains like agriculture, construction, and other key areas of manufacturing possibilities, and to integrate this, to promote access to markets, to establish a systematic view of markets by ensuring that we not only address collectively as EAC issues on policy, legislation, regulation, and standards, and the ongoing work that we're doing progressively to intensify that, to promote greater inclusivity, but to also modernize using technology, but to also look at great levels of integration by way of, and market systems by way of investment in infrastructure. We've seen in Kenya's context that prior to acceding to the chairmanship, Kenya's put in a lot of emphasis with respect to infrastructure, its roads, its transmodal transport systems, its upgrading of the ports, its further automation of the ports, and we've seen significant increases of trade and extra trade through Kenya. The objective would be to ensure that these systems not only benefit the existing transport industry, but also create a profound infrastructural capability for intra-trade, which currently stands at 12%, is a concern for the EAC, but by all means shows the incredible potential and the excitement of how we now transform our leadership to promote that capacity for intra-trade and through value chains, and efforts with respect to cross-border markets to promote equity and access to the common farmer, small-scale farmer who's able to reach and access greater markets beyond simply national markets. And I think that this indeed is all the promise with respect to the infrastructure, the coordination, the ability to build capacity as far as skills. And unique to this initiative is that we would like to see that technology is the key driver in the integration process. With respect to the ongoing efforts of the monetary union, there have been significant efforts towards policies and protocols, the establishment of structures. We've seen a great deal of investment by Kenya by way of banks and its agencies and the insurance sector as well as the investment sectors, all showing that indeed this is an emerging industry. Kenya has the potential to promote that leadership and build further capacities for financial instruments throughout EAC, thereby creating that foundation for the monetary union. And this indeed too is yet another opportunity. With respect to the ongoing efforts with respect to the customs union and the resolutions towards the common external tariffs, all of this is strategic by way of ensuring that we amplify the opportunity of manufacturing within East Africa, promoting greater intra-trade, greater intra-manufacturing, but most importantly looking at value chains from an ecosystem perspective where we promote greater collaboration, ensuring that we harmonize issues of policy, legislation, regulation.
Okay, so we speak at a time when a lot is happening, not just within the East African community, but the continent as a whole. You brought trade issues up. Let's talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We're having this discussion as the region is yearning to implement this. Talk to us about the importance of getting everyone on board, and even as you do, kindly enunciate on the importance of ensuring growth in the region through simplification of business processes and harmonization of the East African community tax regimes.
Indeed, you know, the potential for continental-wide manufacturing prowess is access to markets. And it's with this in mind, with a strong EAC, a fully integrated EAC, an ability for us to develop the necessary systemic structures towards common markets, which include, issues of policy, legislation, the regulatory environment, the common standards to illustrate further, the ability to create, to implement, to verify standards, create a predictable environment for business, an environment which enables them to ensure that they're able to innovate, to invest, to address new global industries which are now coming in COVID times, which include, the growth of technology, as we've seen, or the growth of the construction sector or the retail sector. All of these are, in a sense, booming industries now in this COVID time and COVID era. And so it's that ability to have that agility as far as markets are concerned and have that capacity to access such markets. Of course, infrastructures are also important, like roads and ports and so on. But in addition to that, the ability to find ways in which we coordinate. And so the EAC plays a central role in this within the context of being one of the most important and successful blocks in the world, to take a lead, to build a platform and capacity to ensure that its fully integrated systems are then able to be devolved. To illustrate one recent example is in 2019 we had a challenge with respect to most of the borders of the world and within the continent closing due to the efforts by governments to contain COVID. In the case of Kenya, we were able to quickly, in an agile way, bring consensus and policy to ensuring that we maintain a standard by way of the WHO and the PCR testing as well as the screening systems. That led to various other frameworks and policies and structures which ensured that in most cases, our borders were open. This promoted access to trade across the region. Further to that, in a meeting with respect to the continent, which included COMESA and SADC, they decided to implement the same system in order to ensure that trade continues within the continent. And so these significant achievements go to show how integration creates the possibilities and the promise that indeed African Free Trade Area is a reality and a very successful opportunity by way of how we are able to harmonize key systems and structures to promote cross-border trade, cross-border manufacturing, and markets which would be attractive to new businesses and opportunities for further innovation and investment.
Okay, that's really proper. We'll get to talk about cross-border markets a little bit later on. But, I mean, speaking of challenges, it's been a difficult year, the globe over, in terms of fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd be curious to know what exactly the State Department for East African Community has done and achieved in this period of 1 year. And perhaps you can highlight the operational challenges so we know where we are, what exactly needs to be done in order to strengthen the integration agenda of the East African community.
Within the context of the COVID times, indeed, we've been greatly challenged. We have seen tremendous challenges with respect to ensuring that the transboundary systems with respect to trade and so on have been efficient. We've seen the challenges with respect to communities that trade across borders and their trade and their livelihoods being affected, but also some of the other challenges which are social in nature with respect to gender-based violence and some of the key areas that we need to look into as far as government policy and intervention is concerned. Of course, the government's efforts to date with respect to the containment are progressive. The vaccination programs, the efforts that we put with respect to the containment through zoning, but also the appeal to the conscience of the citizens in order to consistently partner with government in order to fulfill the laid down protocol of social distancing and wearing a mask and sanitizing and so on. And I think that this provides the greatest hope with respect to addressing some of the challenges we have. With respect to cross-border trade, this has bounced back. Indeed, our efforts by way of technology, the applications and the truck driver and transport industry collaboration and partnership with government is on a weekly basis, and it's through this we've been able to address systematically all the issues that had created a huge disruption to their services. And we do have to realize that indeed the transport industry is one of the most important industries we have. The truck driver industry is a continental program, and therefore as government we would like to secure that ecosystem and ensure that it is as sustainable and resilient as possible.
All right, that's really proper. It's proper you noted the transport sector and the importance. But earlier on, you just highlighted the cross-border trading, and just researching on this particular interview, I came across the cross-border markets and the goal to actually improve trade relations between these member states. As you speak to us about the expected benefits, kindly talk to us about who needs to invest in these markets and why.
Indeed, Jesse, this is one of the most important times for investment. We have seen, of course, a growing investment by various other countries like China and India, and indeed even continental programs too. But by far, Kenyans need to invest more into the EAC with this exceptional capacity that exists as far as access to markets from all perspectives, whether you are technically competent, the ability for the EAC to harmonize qualifications from artisans, craftsmen, master craftsmen to scientists and doctors and so on. And so those cross-border services are absolutely critical. The ability for us to take a much larger view of manufacturing and what we're doing in Kenya as far as a Big Four agenda, and see to it that we create interdependent value chains throughout the EAC and access markets into the African Free Trade Area. All of this is now possible because we have structures and systems that are progressively yielding on the key elements of business reform, which include, looking at issues of the harmonization of standards, policy, regulations, and so on.
Okay. Well, that's quite key. As we finalize quite briefly, the importance of private sector and multi-agency partnerships within the East African community. There are a lot of gains. Talk to us about this as we finalize.
Indeed, one of the leadership statements of President Kenyatta within the context of his chairmanship of the EAC is that the EAC structure has to be private sector driven. And indeed, this is very strategic. We're able to ensure that policies and legislations and regulations are therefore able to efficiently be implemented. This indeed is the crux. Indeed, we are already achieving this in Kenya's context by a very good relationship between the private sector and the public sector, but we'd like to see to it that we develop this further within the East African community and ensure that it is as inclusive as possible, as efficient as possible. And therefore, business has that ability to be predictable, have a predictable sense, but at the same time have an involvement in promoting the necessary innovation in that ecosystem. And so that partnership is absolutely critical within the context of EAC and the ability to build associations and confederations and structures that promote the highest level of collective leadership within the context of promoting greater resilience, self-reliance, that diversity for economic growth.
Okay, many thanks. That's all the time we had for this particular conversation. Of course, we keep our finger on the pulse in terms of the goal of better integration within the East African community. Many thanks to Dr. Kevit Desai for making time. He's the Principal Secretary at the Ministry of East African Affairs, just highlighting some of the steps taken in order to achieve this all-important goal, even as we've assumed chairmanship of this rotational position. Many thanks for your time. Of course, let's shift focus now to international matters.